Welcome to the Copilot Connection.
We're here to share with you all the news, insights, and capabilities of the Microsoft Copilot ecosystem from across the entire Microsoft stack. I'm Zoe Wilson, and I'm the Global Digital Workplace Services Consult Leader at Kyndryl, a Regional Director, and an MVP for Copilot.
And I'm Kevin McDonald, MVP for Copilot and Copilot Extensibility, and I look after Copilot and agents as part of the Accenture Microsoft Business Group at Avanade. Yes, it's still confusing. We'll be releasing episodes as podcasts and on YouTube with insights from experts from the community and Microsoft on what the different areas of Copilot are, the impact they can make to you and your organization, what you need to do to prepare for them or start implementing them now, and even how you can extend them.
So, in this episode, which is the first of 2026, we're going to look both back and forwards. So, we'll look back at some of our favourite things from 2025, our best moments of the year. We're going to talk about what we both think will happen next and what we'd like to happen next in this world.
What? They're not the same?
They're not the same. Well, unfortunately, in an ideal world, they would be. But unfortunately, I don't think they are. But we're also going to do a bit of a deep dive into the new Future of Work report that was published last month as well.
Yeah, and I think it's always tricky. I know lots of people, you get to the end of the year and you see all these look backs and thinking what's going on and people setting their goals and resolutions and bits like that. I know I did a retrospective and I've had lots of dilemmas as to how much we do this. So I think by rolling it into looking at the new Future of Work report, I hope we're going to kind of remind people what's going on. And I think, especially looking back, to me, it's important with the Copilot news. I found going back through old episodes, quite how much has changed still. I kind of semi-feel that things almost slowed down a little bit, but then I look back and realize how much has changed, and things I thought had been around for 2-3 years are actually only kind of 6 months old on there. So I do think there's some use in this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just an indication of the industry, isn't it? Things are constantly rapidly evolving. And if we go back almost 2.5 years now, it was why we set this podcast up in the first place, to try to help people cut through some of that noise and distill the updates. And when you were pinging me as you were doing the look back over some of our prior episodes, I think one of the things that struck both of us was just how many of those episodes were focused on latest announcements and news, because things are just constantly changing so much.
And I think it's the other reason that I think this is a general thing about history. You need to look back to understand where you've got to now and why some of those decisions are in there, and things that feel weird and not great now. When you look back at what they were like, you're like, okay, yeah, maybe things aren't quite so bad now in some cases, or others where they're worse. But so I think there is a reason for this. So talking of news, shall we kick off first with what the kind of top 3 best Copilot news of the year was?
Yeah, sure. And I'm going to take the last in our list first, because I know we're looking back, but I think this is going to be one that has the potential to have a big impact on the future. And that was the announcement that Microsoft made at Ignite about Agent 365. No, it's not generally available yet. It's in preview. I know we don't know how much this will cost, and all of the licensing and pricing has yet to be shared. And we don't know when it will be released either, although personally I'd put money on Microsoft Build. But the reason I think...
And some of the things that were shared still aren't available and look very different in the live environments as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think that's a fair comment. The reason that I think this is one of the kind of best announcements of the year, though, is that it addresses a real need that organizations have, which is actually understanding what agents they've got, what they've got access to, what they're doing, how much they're being used, how they relate to each other. And I think it's a really important piece of the puzzle that organizations will need to kind of get to that next level of maturity.
And I do love the phrase they used at Ignite talking about this. It's the control plane. It's getting that visibility, that observability of what's happening, that kind of consistent registry, and being able to control what those things can do, who can access them, what these autonomous agents can have access to. Exactly the same as I gotta be careful saying this. Exactly the same as we've had to do with employees and people working in an organization, it is similar with the agents. And if we look at things like APIs and other elements that we've had, the robotic process automation, we've never really got to the point of having that consistent control. But that's probably because it took so long to build a lot of these things that you had to spend a lot of effort doing it, that it didn't matter so much. But with AI, these things are so much easier to do, so much faster, opening up to so many more people that you need to have those extra levels of control. And I am slightly cynical about Agent 365 because I think the vision is fantastic. I really hope that execution and promise of it does come true. I feel it's moving in the right direction personally. So I'm slightly cynical more because of where it is now and hoping it gets to what it does need to do from there as well. And also that we do see that consistency across Foundry and Copilot Studio and all the different worlds, plus, bringing in other third parties as well. So it's moving in the right direction for me, and I hope we come back in a year's time and I slap myself and going, "Why were you worried, Kevin? How can you not trust Microsoft?"
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's important to recognise that it is still January, and if my
Yeah,
assumption around release timelines are
it
correct
feels like
for
March
build,
already based on
I
one
know
week of work.
yeah,
So,
I mean, we don't have a date for Microsoft Build yet. The last couple of years it's been in May, so I'd anticipate late spring. Which, when you think about where it is in terms of capability and the fact that the things they announced are not quite working yet, there's time. I think if my assumption correct for them to work that through. In terms of that, some of that simplification, though, I think one of the other things that was good in 2025 was some of the license simplification around
huge.
Copilot Studio and Copilot Chat.
And I think that it was funny when you said simplification there. I was like, actually, the three things we've picked, and we'll come to the third in a minute, really have been about simplifying and making it easier. And I think this is important because it's often hard to forget that this generative AI capability is really damn complex. It's really awkward if you drill into it. If you get into there, there's a lot of clever things going on. So all these layers that we're building up are trying to make it as easy as possible for people. And again, to your point earlier about moving fast, when you move fast, you break stuff and you have different teams going through and doing it. So I think simplifying the license, simplifying the access to Copilot Studio so that especially IT teams felt they didn't need to block things from it because they felt more comfortable with being able to do that. Is it perfect yet? No, before anyone says anything. But I think we're seeing that kind of ease of of that capability, and I think that also fits with that license simplification for Studio, also with Copilot Chat. So that ability for people without an M365 license to get some access, seeing consistency, seeing some consistency with naming conventions gradually, and what it means. And I think that's also opening up that Copilot and AI capability to more people as well. So bringing those agents, making it a little easier to understand how much it will cost to bring these different things to different people. It's gradually getting better.
Yeah,
So I think it's been a big
I
thing.
don't. Yeah, so I also think if we just stay on Copilot Chat for a second, I like the fact that additional sets of features and capabilities have been brought into that seeded version of Copilot as well. So people are actually able to do more with that, which makes it makes it easier for people to find value and then potentially make the case to have the premium version. So I think that's a positive sense of direction, and just again coming back to the fact that the three things that we chose were all around simplification. Have you noticed they're actually all about agents as well?
Yes. Well, yeah. Yes. I mean that doesn't surprise me at all. I think But I think, again, agents are about simplifying the complexities of getting Copilot to work well. I think people assumed Copilot could do everything. The reality is it can't do everything. Well, agents are a way of specializing bits to make it easier to get to those specialities. So I think agents are actually, again, another layer of simplification of the generative AI capabilities too.
Yeah. And do we think our 2026 wrap up might have agents as the most used word on the podcast rather than Copilot?
Maybe. Because I think I think the Gary and I stream, yes, but I still think agents are just a mechanism to simplify Copilot. Copilot is the UI for AI. So I'm trying not to say Copilot again. For those who haven't seen it, we put out on LinkedIn. We had a kind of wrapped type thing from Riverside that picked up our most used word of the year, and it just has you, Gary, and I going Copilot, 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 Copilot on there, which did make me laugh
Yeah.
on that. So
So
I think it will still be Copilot.
yeah, agreed. We can revisit that in a year.
Yeah, yeah,
So the third item on the best Copilot news of the year was MCP.
yeah. And I think this is a simplification in two ways. One, it's made it easier for people to connect to APIs. You've got those descriptions as part of the MCP. It's hugely benefited developers and connecting to the information. But I think, again, really, it's stuff we could do before. It's just simplified that story. And I think people have jumped on it because they go, oh, I want to connect to tools. Great, I'll use MCP. Which, you could do a lot of those things, but you did it in different ways, different consistencies. Now it's kind of wrapped that round in a more conventional way. And I think people have seen that framework's the wrong word, kind of consistency of ways of doing things, that model of doing it. I kind of feel that the MCP has actually died off in terms of being talked about a lot in the last 3 to 6 months. I think it got quieter in the second half of the year because the reality of it, of actually being used, was just there and it became natural. And I think how quickly that became natural is really a sign of how powerful it is. So I think MCP is still the big one.
Brilliant. Okay, and then if we think about, from our perspective, what were our best moments of the year?
Well, seeing as you jumped around in the order, I'm going to do the same. This for me is not just one of the best moments of the year. It's best moments of kind of my community career. We've had great fun with the Fireside Chat. I think we had Donna at the beginning of the year, actually, and Donna at the end of the year. I know you couldn't make the last one. I love the Fireside Chat because many of you never will have joined or know what's talked about in there. Because we keep it live, means we can have honest conversations in there. People can be open in the chat because we don't record anything. But my moment, I think, because it was in Seattle, I've only been to Redmond and the Microsoft offices twice ever. And I've always, throughout a lot of my SharePoint career, Jeff Teeper has been up there as the head of that. So the chance to sit down in one of his meeting rooms on the top floor where not many of the other MVPs have been, to kind of walk through the offices, to be able to chat with Jeff, to be able to pull an awkward face when he talked about vibe coding in front of him and try and get away with that. It was just fantastic. I love that. Plus, the conversation was brilliant. I just remember sitting there through and going, they always say don't meet your heroes, but the chats he went through there, the love when he did talk about vibe coding, it was because he could do things himself. I loved the passion he showed, as well as the kind of intelligence to understand where things are going as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely career highlight.
I think that was that session with Jeff in particular was a really interesting example of the power of the Fireside Chat as well, because like you said, these are not recorded, that we don't allow any AI note takers or anything like that. So people have to join live to be able to be part of the conversation. And what it means is that the Microsoft leaders that we have as guests on the Fireside Chat are typically more open. And there were so many things that Jeff was talking about where I was really glad that he was the person talking about it.
We keep looking at each other and go, really, don't say anything more. Just let him go. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so I thought that was brilliant. And then alongside the Fireside Chat, another highlight for me was some of the work that we got to do with Chris Huntingford. So we had him as a guest on the podcast for a really interesting session around responsible AI and red teaming. And then in December at ESPC, the three of us presented a full day workshop called Agentageddon, which was basically a full day looking at all of the things that you need to think about when you're building agents to make sure that they are safe and secure and responsible. And that was just The podcast with Chris was brilliant, but the workshop that we did was so much fun. I absolutely loved it.
Love the breadth of it because we love getting excited about agents. We love getting cynical about agents. We love educating people in the right thing to do. And I think it was a full day of covering all of those, showing the really interesting things you can do, the power of them, while also showing how to do it the right way. That combination of it. And no, we wouldn't have talked about it on the podcast. That moment where one of the security people for the venue was stood at the side, just with her mouth open, as Chris was talking about responsible AI and how you can get Chris to tell you about how to make drugs and how to steal cars.
How you can get Copilot to tell you how to make drugs, not Chris.
Yes, sorry, yes. On that, and her being shocked. And I think you heard her later, didn't you, Zoe?
I did, yeah. So it was just brilliant because I think the pre-conf workshops, obviously, it's not the full conference with attendees. So the number of people in the building is smaller and the corridors are typically empty. And security were just walking up and down and peering their heads in. And we spotted her, like Kevin said, jaw to the floor. And then I went to go get a coffee and heard her telling the lady who was working on the coffee station. And she was saying, and then he was getting the AI to tell him how to steal cars. I thought that was brilliant.
To me, it was one of the best moments because it's very easy to see yourself in this bubble. We see Copilot and AI, and I think it's been the thing in my career that has opened up to so many other people and impacted everyone is seeing part of that. And so literally seeing it happen there and then was fantastic.
Mm. Yeah. And then our last highlight. So there were a number of awards last year. I had the very great pleasure in October to be able to present Kevin with the Modern Work Evangelist Award at the South Coast Summit Community Awards, where the two of us were actually, we presented all of the awards, but I managed to manipulate it so that I could present Kevin with his, and he had no idea. We thought someone else had won.
Yeah. I was about to say truly manipulate and trick me on that one.
And then again...
And sorry, just very quickly, I think it's lovely having awards, and I know we'll come to other ones in a sec, but also giving out that awards and being part of the committee, helping kind of form that, making sure we hear the stories from people. I love that some of those awards we gave out were people I didn't really know on there. And I think that's fantastic, hearing from other people, getting new voices through as well. So
yeah, that's a really
it's a
good
bit
point.
like Christmas. It's giving and receiving, which I really love.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. And I know that some people are quite cynical when it comes to awards like this and feeling like they're a bit of a popularity contest. Having been part of the team that drives the UK Community Awards, I know that there's a lot of work that goes into it to make sure that it's not just the same people who are shortlisted as finalists and who receive the awards. It's so important, though, that we have things like this to amplify the work that people are doing and to make sure that there are visible role models in the community that people can look up to and that people are able to be recognised for the work that they do.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic for that. Which brings me on to another big highlight, which was the ESPC Awards. And I know we talked about the nominations for those and the voting. So we were up for Best Podcast. And I'm very happy to share that Copilot Connection did win Best Podcast for that. So that is very happily sat there. And I remember, in fact, 10 years ago exactly, in Vienna, being at ESPC, and I didn't really know much about ESPC. I wasn't fully connected with community. I remember seeing the awards and going, God, imagine one day of being able to stand up there in front of everyone. So to be able to actually do that feels a lovely circle back to those early moments. But it wasn't just us. Zoe, you were up for 2 other awards. So it must be nice to take home at least one of those.
Or 2.
Or 2?
Yeah.
So yeah, you actually got the hat trick, which was absolutely fantastic to watch live there.
I mean, to be honest, I I thought we might get one, and I'd hoped it was the podcast one, because that recognizes the work that we both do to drive awareness and education for Copilot. So I was absolutely blown away to win both of the others that I was the finalist for, and that was the tech leader and diversity leader. So tech leader, it feels like that kind of recognizes all of the work that I do to role model from a leadership perspective, but we've talked about this quite a lot before. Diversity is something that I'm really passionate about as well. So, yeah, blown away. And thank you to everybody who voted for all of us.
And congratulations to the other winners as well on there. I know we have Marcus, Reshmi was particularly excited. The look on her face winning that with, I think she had Andrew Connell and someone else. I can't remember who the others were up there. So I think she was gobsmacked by that. And it's lovely seeing quiet people like that get recognised very well. I know Sharon Smith also won up there. And I should say to our fellow podcast nominees, a big thank you as well to, oh my gosh, why can't I keep forgetting their name? Code something deploy with AC and Julie. One day I'll remember fully their name, which I do listen to on a regular basis, so I really should know. And of course, Office 365 Distilled. A big thank you to Moraine and especially Steve for sending his photo with his finger up on there. I'll let you decide which finger that was for those just listening. On that one, but no, I genuinely listen to both of those don't miss an episode of those, so do listen to them as well.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing to say as well. There were so many good people in the finalists for all of the awards.
Yeah, no, it was lovely to be part of. Shall we move on to less ego polishing, looking back and things for us, and share some nice news and information?
Yep, certainly. So let's dig into the new Future of Work report.
Share a window, which is why I'm hoping you might talk a little bit about what the future of work is. There we go. Hopefully.
So while Kevin, there we go. While Kevin tries to sort his tech out, I think the first thing I'd say is the new Future of Work report is very comprehensive. How many pages is it? You see at the top, it's
74. 74.
Yeah. So it's incredibly detailed, and it's basically looking at research that Microsoft have done, as well as other research papers that have been published around the world that helps us both understand where AI is today and the considerations for what that future of work with AI looks like. And I think, is this the third time that they've published this, Kevin?
Yes, definitely third. Is it third or fourth? I think third. You're right.
Yeah.
Now, and it is a science paper, as you say. It's research. It's science based. It's headed a lot by Jamie Teven as chief scientist at Microsoft, and it's that department with Microsoft that is science based. So it's looking at evidence. It's looking at testing these things out. I was going to say it's not marketing. I might come back to that comment a little bit later. I have a little cynicism around some elements from there, but it's not particularly. Oh, hang on, sorry. Fifth, 21, 22, 23, 24, now 25 on that. So yeah, fifth actual report that's come out from there. It's bringing it through. A possible slight blip that I'm going to have to work through in editing because apparently I dropped off and Zoe couldn't hear me. So let's come back and talk a little bit about the overview of the new Future of report. And there's kind of lots of sections within there. The adoption and usage, as you'd expect, a big topic. Really happy actually see the impact on work and labour is in there. Talking about human AI collaboration, AI for teamwork.
Yeah. Just on that, Kevin, I mean, it's good that they've got the impact on work and labour markets in here, and we'll get to this in a little bit more detail later on, but it's good that it's in there. I'm not sure the impact is great.
No, absolutely. And I talked about the marketing, and we will come back to this. I think that's one of the areas where I kind of feel they're downplaying it a little bit, and I imagine there was lots of arguments internally around that, but we'll definitely come back to that more. I think it's good they're looking at it at least. Let's. I'm starting positive. It's my New Year mantra that is disappearing rapidly. Looking at the thinking, learning, psychological, looking at specific roles and industries, and also, as it says, external voices. So they, as you noted earlier, they are using external other papers and things, not just looking at the Microsoft world for this, which is great.
Yeah. So this is kind of how the Microsoft research team have structured the report. Kevin and I both spent some time looking through this separately and then coming together to share what we thought. And there were some key themes that we pulled out of this, which some of the themes go across kind of multiple areas of these sections. And rather than going through this really long report in the way Microsoft have structured it, we thought it might be helpful just to talk in terms of some of these key themes instead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first one was around judgment on using AI. And what they meant was that it's that I love that phrase, moral evaluation. That if you're using AI and almost if you're not declaring it, you're kind of almost thought down on within it for using AI
Yeah, I
within
think this
there.
is interesting as well because it goes both ways. Because people who are using AI expect to be, so as an individual, if they are using AI, they expect to be evaluated as lazier, less competent, less diligent, less trustworthy, and less moral. And they often are evaluated in that way as well.
Yeah. And I think it's a real consideration when you're using AI content is how you use that, because in so many cases it's very obvious within there that you are using that as well.
Yeah.
We
The other
should
thing that
declare. I don't know about you. I did not use Copilot to summarize this report at all or pick up key points. I literally went through every bit of it. I think you were the same, weren't you?
Yeah, I was the same. I did actually consider using it, but I thought, you know what, I actually want to make sure that I read it properly, and I think if we hadn't have been talking about it in this context, I would have likely used AI. But actually, I wanted to make sure I could pick out any interesting nuggets that maybe wouldn't come through in an AI summary.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
the other thing that I thought was interesting on this section was the fact that there have been a few studies that look at the perceptual harms, or, does the way that you're judged for using AI differ across social identities? So one study found no gender differences in experiments across different jobs. Um, Another study found that men and in particular East Asian freelancers were more likely to be suspected of using AI and evaluated more negatively as a result of that. And then for software engineers specifically, there was a report that found that women who are deemed as using AI receive a competency score that is lower than men who are deemed as using AI for identical code. So a mix, I think, there in terms of what the studies are finding in terms of those different kind of social identities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I really don't. I'm going to sound like I'm downplaying those, which I don't think is. It's worth noting that this is obviously a new world. It's moving quickly, so to do scientific studies is very hard. So I think we will see contradictory and things that don't necessarily bring the same one as you do with science. So, but I think certainly that one around looking at how people are perceived within there is very interesting as what it's picking up from that as well.
Yeah. And then the other thing that is in this report in terms of judgment. So for those who can see the screen, if you're watching this rather than just listening, on this slide, there's a middle bullet point which talks around
Oh, sorry.
how being seen as using AI can harm relationships. Actually, there's another slide which talks about this particular report in a little bit more detail, and that is AI work slop. Now, many of you will be familiar with the concept of AI slop. It is all over LinkedIn. It is all over Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. This is low value, generally,
Emails.
well, that's work
Sorry.
slop. So
Yeah, yeah.
AI slop is
Okay.
generally this kind of low cost, low quality, low value content that is just swarming social media. And work slop basically is the term for this same type of content that is produced inside an organization. And it's content that at first glance might appear useful, but actually is lacking in substance, it's incomplete, it's hallucinating, it's inaccurate. And it is undermining people's trust in their colleagues, because what it like if I create work slop and then send it to you, Kevin, instead of me being that human in the loop who has the onus and responsibility to make sure it's correct, what it's doing is instead putting that effort and that work onto you to be able to either interpret, correct, or in some cases even redo the work. And it's really damaging in terms of the trust and reputation that people will have within an organization if they're just. I mean, you see this when you see people putting AI generated nonsense all over LinkedIn
I was
instantly.
about to say, is this a grumble at all those Instagram videos I send you without checking whether they're true or not?
Yeah, well, AI slop on Instagram. I mean, you could argue that the stuff that goes onto LinkedIn is probably a bit of a crossover between AI slop and work slop because it's
Looks
more
like,
in that
yeah.
work context. But the amount of AI generated low value nonsense I see posted that doesn't actually say anything of value means that I actually use these apps less often because as soon as I see it, it irritates me. And it's the same in the work context. If someone sends you an email that has the kind of Copilot tag at the bottom saying, "Would you like me to put this into a more informal uh, version?" or something like that, instantly it just switches you off to whatever has been said, doesn't it?
Don't know. I find it a tricky thing because it sounds like we're saying don't use AI at work, which is not true at all. It's use it intentionally before you send an email, the same as if you wrote it yourself. Just read it and think, what would you feel if you received this on
Just
there? It's take
check
that
the
look and
output. Yeah,
yeah,
check the
yeah.
output. Does it read like a human? Is it correct? Is it actually addressing a need, or is it answering a question, or is it just a regurgitation of kind of average content that isn't actually saying anything of meaningfulness?
And I might get myself in trouble. As a consultant, I often find that I tend to splurge and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we kind of do it in the podcast as well. So actually, I use Copilot more often to try and get more succinct and more to the point within there rather than I think a lot of, as you say, those work slop emails are fleshing out, trying to put more waffle in there and not seeing. And so it's being honest with yourself and getting that balance between them that I think is important.
Mm. Yes,
And
and I
what
think I think the I think the point that you made about this is not as saying don't use AI at work. This is about making sure that you are still the owner of the quality of the work that you put out into your organization. Be that human in the loop.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember if we're covering this. Where did I put that worrying number? But it was something like 60% of people skip accuracy checks in AI output. I'm going to jump around. Sorry for those scrolling on there. Yeah, it was that over reliance on AI that I think leads into this, the blind trust on it. Where did I see that number? Yeah, 60% skip accuracy checks within there that I think is really, really concerning. It is still your responsibility of the output that you put out there. Yes, Deloitte consultants who keep putting AI work without checking it. I may be speaking to you and any others who've done it and not got away with it publicly on there as
Yes.
well.
Yeah, and there will be a lot of it happening. I think we'll start to see a bit of a pushback or a backlash in the industry.
Yeah. Uh,
Okay,
should we
so
pick up on
moving on to
a
the
nice use?
say that again?
Should we pick up on a nice use rather than being rude about things?
All right, I'll let you choose where we're going next.
So this one
This is where
I
I
think
was
we
sending
both
you.
noted. Yeah. Do you want to kick off this one?
Yeah, so I mean, we've talked on this podcast before about the kind of maybe a belief that AI, the keyboard won't be relevant anymore. And one of the things that's mentioned in a few different places in this report is multimodal AI interactions, the different ways that people will interact with AI. And I still don't think that the keyboard is going anywhere particularly in a shared office context.
Yeah.
But the different ways that we can now start to interact with AI can actually make it more meaningful for people. So if you think about different persona types, for those who work in an office, I really don't want to be sitting in a shared office and listening to people asking Copilot by voice to do things. So keyboard, yes, please. But for frontline workers, particularly those who are operating machinery with their hands and things like that, they may not actually want to be able to type or to read long descriptions or long documents. So, there is a definite group of users where being able to interact with voice or in other ways is actually really important. And for those who don't speak English necessarily or another well-supported language as their first language, being able to use something like voice with real-time translation can actually mean that they're able to give AI more meaningful and more accurate inputs, which will help them get better outputs.
I think it's fascinating. I think we're going to come on to inequality a little bit later, but I see the positive in me thinks fantastic. This will reduce that inequality by giving people more power on there. I'll come. I think we'll come on later into the negative flip to that as
Mm.
well. So I think it is important, especially for those building and looking at agents, which I know many people we're talking to here are, is to think about who's going to use it, how are they going to use it, are there different ways of doing things, and it's not just the voice; it's kind of understanding that audio and video as well. It's a fantastic Instagram reel that someone sent me where someone had built not really a burglar alarm, but it's basically a camera in their house that used AI to say, "Does this person look like they're up to no good?" And then it would have a chat with them saying, I hate to say, it looks like you might be thinking about breaking into the house. I really don't think that's a good idea. I could call the police, but I don't want to. What do you think? And it was having this chat. It's like, oh, you're looking like you're still going to do that. I really think it'd be best for both of us if we don't try this. And it was having that conversation. I think just that different way of thinking around things, of not just I recognize someone doing something dodgy, quick call the police, but engaging with them, having that conversation at recognizing what someone is doing and reacting to that, and bringing these kind of multimodal ways of bringing those different inputs at the same time to work together, I think would be really powerful. And I think
Yeah.
we spoke last year in the report. There was a lot about the kind of UI changing from that kind of pure chatbot interface to more and different interactions. And I think we've seen quite a few elements of that. Certainly things like the suggestions of what to talk about next and elements there. We're probably seeing it slightly less in the Copilot world, but we've certainly seen buttons appear a lot more differently within Office on there in terms of interacting based on what you're doing within that. What I liked from this one, so we'll come back to orchestrator agents in a sec, was
Yeah.
that view of not just getting rid of the keyboard, but the way that your UX behaves changing with air. And like things like it's talking here about a long press to emphasize on a bit of text. So rather than saying, can you rewrite this bit? Just pressing and holding and saying, yeah, this is a bit I want to rewrite. Merging blocks together with your fingers, this touchscreen view, elaborating by pinching. I'm fascinated. I think it would quite a way to get the habits of this going, but I
Yeah.
really love this idea.
Well, if you think about the way that people interact, predominantly with smartphones, but also with tablets and touchscreen laptops, for a lot of people, using gestures and touch is
Mm.
something that they are already familiar with. I think there is a bit of a kind of new muscle that would need to be built in terms of actually understanding what, the like separating your fingers to cut sections and things like that. There's a bit of a learning path that people need to go on, but I think this is really interesting. And actually, if you think about this in like, a big screen context, is it getting to like, what's that film with Tom Cruise where,
Minority Report.
yeah, that's the one.
Yes.
Is it getting,
Yeah. Yeah,
is it getting towards
absolutely.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can certainly see there enabling things, and even what's the one that used to have Arnold Schwarzenegger in, and they remade it where they kind of press on the side of walls, and your eyes would pick up. This is enabling a lot more of those things, and I can imagine children naturally adopting some of these things
Yeah.
from there a lot more easily. So I love these bits about thinking about the different ways that the experience will happen with that as well.
Yeah. The other thing that I just wanted to pick up that was on the prior slide as well was kind of the different ways people might interact with audio. Sorry, not audio,
Mm.
images and videos. And it had the example of farmers, for example, who might not speak English, but would be able to use pictures
Yeah,
to
yeah,
assess the type of disease that a plant might have. And
yeah,
actually, I know
absolutely.
this isn't like an industry-wide thing, but that was something I was doing quite a lot last year because I am not good at gardening, and I have to make sure that my garden has only cat-safe plants in it because my cats are stupid. So I'm not very good at it. I need to make sure they're safe. I was using AI to actually upload pictures to ask what I need to do with them to help them thrive. Or if I was out in a garden shop or a nursery, I was sending pictures of plants saying, "Is this cat safe? Can I put this in my garden?" And being able to kind of extrapolate that from just my personal use, trying to figure out what on earth I'm doing when I'm not green fingered at all, to people who are actually able to use this to make smarter decisions around the farming that they will rely on for their lives and livelihood, I think is brilliant.
But I think also in terms of the understanding of that, for you, an AI one that gives you and has some text at the bottom saying, no, this isn't ideal for cats, blah, 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 why? Whereas having something that showed you a picture of a field and maybe hovered over with cat, no cat, cat, no cat, generated with different images based on what you have, it's enabling those different ways of interacting and visualizing things as well within there, which I think is fascinating too from that. The other one in this section, slightly yes about UX, but as someone who's sort of seeing multi-agent an awful lot, and this notion of orchestrator agents, the ones that will control your other agents to kind of bring those in at the right time. Really interesting the needs to consider the trust of that. And I think if you've got this multi-agent system, your orchestrator is doing one thing, and then those child agents, other ones underneath that, those worker agents, something goes wrong there. And they could all behave in a different format. They could be doing different things, have different tones of voice, different instructions within there. Making sure that orchestrator, oh gosh, that's hard to say, orchestrator agent works well with each of those and can surface the relevant information without kind of bringing that through, making sure it can understand the errors that happen at that point and bring that through. The trust of each of those is going to be really important. So if you build, or even not even just if you change some of those worker agents without the orchestrator agent understanding, you're going to reduce the impact. So it could be a very small, let's say you're building one agent that logs a ticket that's only purpose is not to look at the information, just taking what the user is saying and logs a ticket for that. If you change that so it's not as effective, you lose the trust of that whole system suddenly from there. And I think that's a really, really interesting point to think of that. It's the same as we think with any software design, but I think it's re-establishing that and getting people to think that's going to be very interesting within there as well. There's another section. I'm not going to jump into it too much, but there was a lot in there around, from a developer point of view, how we evaluate. And there was talk about how we evaluate the success of the coding agents through lines of code. How many lines of code is it creating? Yeah, for developers, that's been debunked as a useful measure for years. Why are we looking back at it at coding agents? I'll try and to put a link to which slide that was in the show notes, because I thought that was definitely something worth looking at as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting statistic that draws out one of the big problems that enterprises have in terms of how do you actually measure the success
Yeah,
of Copilot agents, AI deployments, because it's not as simple as saying, okay, this thing's producing X amount of documents or writing Y amount Y number lines of code. it has to be more tied to business outcomes and value. And depending on the role, depending on the agent, depending on the organization, the industry, value is going to be something different in each of these cases. And I think this is where organizations have a body of work to do in terms of understanding collaborative AI and how people and AI work together. And that brings us on to the next section, which is around collaborative AI.
So I think this is really interesting, and this kind of triggered. We'll put a link to this in the show notes, but we mentioned Jamie Teven's keynote at ESPC. That's available online now, not just with her speaking, but also the slides as well, which is helpful on there as well. And I think we were both watching that in different parts because you were in the posh seats and I was late up the back. On there, but absolutely just mesmerized by what she was saying. And it's this evolution where generative AI has been. It's very much, this is for me. I want to go and rewrite this email. I want to write this email. I want to summarize this. So how can we use AI together? And actually how a lot of what's been built for generative AI has been built on individual elements, not collaborative aspects. And if we think about large language models are not trained on work projects, they're almost trained on the outputs of those, not where people are working together so much within there. So there's a new way that people have got to think about these things coming together as well. So really, really interested in how that comes through as well.
Yeah, I think what I can't remember which slide it was on. I didn't write the slide number down, but there are also slides that talk about it might be in this section, this kind of AI for teamwork context. AI currently works better for individuals than it does for teams. When Microsoft and all of these other research companies are looking at the way that AI is driving productivity in an organization, it is doing that better for individuals than teams. And some of this might be because work slop is causing people to lose trust. And when people start to work across multiple people and share AI generated work products, it's not quite at that level yet where people have got that trust in it. But I think this is going to be where the next wave of value and productivity creation needs to come from. And there was a couple of different bodies of thought in this regarding the way that teams might change, with one saying that teams might become
teams there, obviously.
Yeah, well, teams might become kind of bigger, cross-org boundaries, being able to generate from that collective intelligence of large numbers of people, versus another theory that teams might become smaller and more agile with a smaller group of humans backed up by or augmented by agents that help them do the same work better.
Yeah, and I think this actually we're going to talk about this later, but I think seeing organizations think about their structure, I'm just going to come back to the previous slide, that it's that need to kind of have specific processes and get that process focused strategy, really working out what your outcome is that you can bring together there. And the outcome focused strategy, what you get out of it is going to be key to the success. And too many organizations don't really do that. They just kind of, yeah, we'll use AI. What are we trying to achieve? Yeah, we'll use AI on there. And then they go, right, we're going to use AI to get people more AI enabled and things on there, rather than looking what they truly need to achieve and bringing the right things to that. So I think some interesting intelligence in how this is going to come through. I was particularly interested in some of these collective intelligence views on there. I think how we bring the information and make that available. We certainly internally have been talking about how can we learn from projects? Can AI suddenly help us learn from what's gone wrong with projects and make them work better in the future more effectively? So if someone could crack that nut, that would be incredible. I wouldn't hold up too much hope though.
Yeah, and we'll have a guest on a future podcast episode who I think has quite strong views and perspectives on what needs to be true for these new models of collaboration to be achieved.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on that, as we're talking about orgs, I'm just going to jump a little bit onto slide 59 because I think trust and having leaders support and allowing people to fail on there has been something we've talked about within organizations, even back in the Viva and employee experience days, giving people that safety. But I think it was this note on here on the psychological safety, psychological well-being for people, that to get, I think this is the wrong slide actually, but to get, there was one of the ones in here that talked about to get AI success, you've got to allow people to feel safe with using it, to feel safe with the outcomes within that mentality of it. If you just drive people, say you must use this to be more productive, doesn't actually drive any real productivity increases within there. So helping people feel that they can use it effectively is really important. And I think that comes into a lot of the adoption and change that we've talked about as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's this is kind of a theme, I think, through the whole set of research that's been published. But they talk about the fact that if it's a top-down mandate from leaders to use AI, people won't want to do it because they feel like
Yeah.
it's threatening the
Yeah.
creativity and the value that they can bring. They will be more inclined to feel that psychological safety if the leaders are positioning it well and they're leaning in and their peers are embracing it and they understand the context in which it's been driven within the organization. So for me, one of the big things that this shows is that organizations need to be really intentional in the way that they look at how humans and AI will work together. And that involves looking at the processes. It involves looking at how the roles of the human in that process or in that function will change, looking at the way that the human systems architecture is all kind of designed and operated, which will ultimately provide both the pathway to adoption, it will provide the pathway to value, it will provide that psychological safety and well-being so that people understand the journey that they're on and they're able to embrace it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, a kind of slightly broad point on that in generally, this paper is intended to highlight what they've seen, not necessarily what you should do about it within there. So you'll see there's lots of things like it raises questions on things that should be done and investing in community-driven evaluation. So it kind of makes hints on way to do it rather than this intending to be the actual strategy. So it's kind of highlighting things people need to look at. And I think that brings us on to one of the ones that I think we've talked about on the show before, certainly when we did the workshop. It is that worry on jobs on there. And I think this is something that we've certainly seen and feel within there. And this just highlights that it's those early career impacts that are the biggest at the moment within that. They're seeing the largest that reduction in the number of hiring for people early in their careers. Within that, we're seeing results vary from slightly increased earning, especially for occupations with high AI, to no significant, to some really showing reduced salaries in high wage occupations, which is my suspicion on a lot of these. But also that evidence, even people when they have jobs, of those negative effects, they're getting less of that experience of doing things that is essential to be able to have that judgment that we talked about, that judgment on AI, because they don't have that experience of to actually play into it as well. And I think
Yeah,
that's going to
I
be
feel
a really worrying thing that we won't see for many years. And it can be too late by then.
Yeah, I mean, I remember in kind of the early days of Copilot, I talked to a wide range of organizations in different industries. And one of the common things that came across, particularly in professional services type organizations, so law firms, that kind of thing, was some of the senior people saying, if Copilot is going to do all of these activities in meetings and this kind of thing, that's how our entry level solicitors or clerks,
Yeah,
that's how they learn. They
yeah,
learn by being in these meetings, by taking notes, by providing summaries, and then having that critique. So I think what we're starting to see here is almost that coming true, where organizations are seeing less need to bring in early professional hires. And for those who've kind of, they've been in education throughout the whole time that this change has been happening. So they were on a path to go and become qualified and then move into a career, and now it's really difficult for them to get into that career. So it's problematic for our young people, and there's kind of this group of them who've come through that. Some of them will still be in education, some of them are coming through now, where education hasn't been able to adapt quick enough to give them some of the skills that they will need. And some of these people have been learning these skills anyway. You know, I've seen a lot of early professional hires who are just absolutely fantastic in the way that they embrace this. But there are less opportunities for them to actually get their foot in the door and start their professional career. And when they come in, they're being expected to deliver at a higher level. So it's going to create a real problem in a few years as some of those older, more experienced people start aging out of employment.
Nice. No, sorry.
You're not that old, Kevin.
True, true. What I was going to say before I got distracted on that was I think what is needed is for companies to intentionally train and support people that previously people have learned just by being hands-on and taking things on. Now it needs to be thought about a bit more. We need to plan for, it's not just let's not use AI, let's get people to do it. It's how can we make sure that those things we've learnt about through lots of habits and hands-on experience, how can we make sure that people consider those important and how they learn and get educated on this? If we bring it back to coding and this kind of whole vibe coding will solve everything. Same with low code. No, we've got to educate people on what the importance of structuring your code, of planning things out, of having that architecture. The same sits there. But it's going to be the same for outside of coding, as you say, things like lawyers, that hunch that people have, that gut feel that something's wrong. Going back to that 60% of people don't check accuracy. A lot of more experienced people will kind of notice that something's off. They smell that something's wrong. Now we need to turn that smell into something a bit more scientific on there and train people into what do we mean by those kind of telltale signs of things there and educate people in that, which is, I don't think it'll be easy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is something that we just need to switch on and do, but people need to really be thinking ahead for that. Because otherwise we're going to fall into a problem when it's too late to do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we reflect back on the conversation that we had with Chris Huntingford, one of the things that we talked about that I know all of us are really passionate about is that we shouldn't be protecting jobs or protecting the status quo. We need to protect the people, and this requires intentionality. It requires intentionality in the way that we think about what the future will look like. Who are the people that we need to do the jobs? How do we make sure we set them up for success? And for those people who are already in employment, we need to be really intentional about how their work will change. And this is where I think some of the AI projects are maybe falling down a little bit because the technology proof of concept happens, but people are not looking at those human plus AI systems in a way to actually understand what does this mean? How, as these things kind of iterate and evolve and become more mature, how does the role of the agent or agents change in that? And how does the role of the people change in that? And then what does this mean for the future of how this work gets done in this part of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that leads on to a lovely post that a fellow MVP, who I won't name because we haven't asked him, sent us about Tailwind. And how they've had to lay off 75% of their team, not because things aren't working. Tailwind's just as popular, in fact, even more popular than ever. But their business model was supported by people using that documentation. And now you can go to GitHub Copilot, maybe even some non-Microsoft things, who knew, that you can actually go and ask that question there. No one's going to the document. So there's no way for them to make money from people seeing the advertising there. They've seen that decline in traffic, that 80% decline in revenue. So they don't need so many people. You talked there about protecting people. I have slight mixed feelings on this. I would say that their business model needs to adjust quickly, and they probably should have been positioning ahead to that. They've obviously gone, well, we are adjusting the business model. We're getting rid of people. Is there not a way that they could be more successful in different ways? possibly. But I think this is the turmoil that we will see as people haven't adjusted quick enough. They haven't looked at what the impact of that is. And it is the people who are going to suffer in many cases.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right in that there needs to be a business model change here, and I think this has the potential to increase friction in terms of how people are leveraging frameworks like this. Because what I think will happen as a result is rather than having like a free version and then a funnel through their documentation to a premium version, it will just become paid for at point of access. So, it might be that for people who want to use agents that leverage things like Tailwind, it may be that they pay at the point of the agent accessing that or something like that. But in terms of their business at the moment, obviously it's not they can't sustain the amount of people that they got. So I think they're obviously making adjustments, but they'll need to think about what that future business model looks like to ensure that they can continue to grow and scale.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm thinking Wikipedia is the one that jumps to mind as well, that their funding is from people seeing that advert. And if people aren't seeing those adverts, they're not encouraged to donate. That's going to be a big problem. So, yeah, definitely.
Does anybody actually donate to Wikipedia?
Yes. Actually, do you know who really does? My son now does a regular, he doesn't earn much money, but gives £5 a month to Wikipedia. And I was like,
Interesting.
wow. That's really impressive. He's for those who don't know, he's 19. He's on his gap year at the moment, so working in a retail store to earn money before going to South America. But he says, "No, I use Wikipedia an awful lot, therefore I should pay for it." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I feel so
Inter-
proud."
Interesting. Interesting. So the just staying on jobs for a second, I think the other thing that we are seeing in the market, obviously a lot of big tech companies laid people off last year because of AI efficiencies. For that, typically I read we need to free up money so we can spend it on AI rather than AI actually having implemented efficiencies in their business. And it appears that there's almost a bit of a not a backlash, but there's a consequence that they are
Reevaluation.
now
Yeah.
facing where they've perhaps been a little bit too hasty in laying off large numbers of people.
Yeah, and I think we saw this going back to my comment earlier about sending you lots of Instagram videos. There was a lovely one talking about this, that there was 4,000 support staff laid out following a rollout of AI agents. I've seen bits and pieces. I think this is one of those kind of rumory ones that you'll never see anything formal, but a lot of people being rehired and reevaluating that, especially the effectiveness of some of those modelers and the assumptions made about what they can do versus what they actually can do. And I think to the points we've made, it's more about process evaluation and getting the process working in there rather than necessarily LLMs not working on there. It's they work for what you make them work, and they won't just reinvent everything for you without some work. So very interesting. We'll include links to that one as well. With it, yeah, AI linked to 4,000 jobs of redeployment, which I thought was interesting. So intriguing on there. And I think that kind of brings to the final sort of topic on the report was around inequality generally. And there was some positive news in this, that actually there's an increase in lower income countries of actually using AI, and particularly for schooling within there as well. So I think it's one of these things that has concerned me, that access to AI becomes something that not everyone can form, and we see a growing gap between those who have it and those who can't have it within there. But we're seeing that close, and we're seeing more and more of those countries get access to it in there. I mean, it's high, as it says there, with the digital infrastructure. There's more in this, which won't go into fully, but around in fact, maybe it's on the next slide, so I can jump in there, that actually LLMs working better with diverse languages, lower covered languages and cultures within there. It's improving in its quality on that, which I think is great. It's almost the 80-20. We're seeing that 20% that was being ignored actually getting better. Is it good? No, still needs to be better, but I think it's good to see that there is some improvement on that, which I really like.
Yeah, I think the other thing that was really interesting in this with regards to inequality was the risk of it worsening equality in the workplace. And there were a
Yeah,
few different lenses that it outlined. It basically described it as multifaceted, where it could worsen wage inequality. It could, if AI is not implemented intentionally, it could encode inequality, such as ideologies of certain groups, or things like biases in organizations' corpus of data could then become encoded into AI solutions. There could be evaluative inequality, so how different workers' biases and perceptions shape the way that they are willing to kind of use or not use AI. And then also the risk of kind of further worsening the relational inequality. So how power sits within an organization, and the kind of different levels of influence or authority that that parts of an organization might have could be destabilized in the way that human AI interactions are implemented.
yeah. I think it was funny. I was as you were speaking, I was thinking about it's probably one of our first shows where you talked about the issues with those who have Copilot and those who don't in terms of doing reviews on them on there, and it's that playing out plus more within there, which I
Plus
think
more,
is
yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of just that was the visible start of it, but this
yeah,
kind of expands out into into the way people are rewarded, their willingness to use it or not, the biases that then become enshrined in the system, in the agentic systems that could potentially power
yeah,
an organization. So
yeah.
all of this for me comes back to that intentionality, being intentional about the stuff that you build, the way it's going to work, how it will work with people.
Yeah. So, for those watching video would have seen this a lot. Please do read the rest of the report. There's so many small nuggets that we couldn't pick up on all the ones we found, and I'm sure you will find others. aka.ms/NFW. That's not NSFW on there. This is very much safe for work on there, and well worth a good read from that. So, based on that and some of the things we've seen, and our own experience. Zoe, what do we think will happen in the next year?
So, what do we think will happen? I mean, one of the things that we talked about was level of cynicism. So,
Mm,
as we've discussed in a number of different ways with this report, some of this is hard and it requires that intentionality. It requires a lot of effort in terms of the organizations. And I do feel like there'll be a level of cynicism or frustration from organizations who have maybe not appreciated until this year how much work it actually takes, and what they need to do to be able to really get to those transformative potential outcomes. So I think that will be a common theme, and I expect we'll probably talk about that a fair bit through the year.
yeah. And I think that intentionalism, we were just talking about the org design. I think people will start to have that realization that just using AI won't bring enough benefits. That human system architecture that I think we're hoping will be a big focus of what we're looking at in Copilot Connection this year, along with what the technology does with it, will be a big focus from there as well.
Yeah, and for me, I think that that org design. One of the things we've seen traditionally is you get like UX design or experience design as a construct for how things change in the organization, and then you have change management, which is the how you adopt adoption. For me, what I think we need is actually a blend of that, with people who've got an understanding of technology, an understanding of how organizations work and how work gets done. And I think this is going to be like a potential new career path or a new set of skills where we need people who, and it can't be multiple people with different disciplines who do this, because it just becomes too financially costly to do it. We need people who really understand the intricacies, who are able to work with those engineers who are building the AI solutions and with the people who do the jobs, to really think about what this means going forward. So I think we'll see a lot of that starting to come out, and the organizations that embrace it are the ones that are going to see those big results.
Yeah, we'll succeed from it. Um, we've talked about it quite a bit already, but I think Jamie Teven's view on that collaborative AI will see that expansion. We should say Copilot, just to make sure it feeds into things. But I think we'll see that in Copilot. We're already seeing in that facilitator agent where it sits within a meeting. I think we'll see the technical capabilities increase and the adoption of people understanding and using that together. People using Copilot within group chats to answer questions directly. I think right now people kind of ask a question, they go to Copilot, copy and paste the answer, put it back into a chat. I think that habit of using it collaboratively will happen
Yeah.
on there. I think the big thing that my feeling is that we will start to also see a lot more talk about data sovereignty and even almost service sovereignty within there. I've been amazed around the discussions I've heard around on-premises SharePoint on there. People
we thought that
having
died years ago.
yeah, but I think it's that nerves that people have of the political situations we're in and people being a little bit more protectionist. So I think especially in the EU, we'll see people looking to bring their data, bring that control over there, but they'll start to look at some of the services. If we look at Claude rolling out in Copilot and being available there, it's only in the US currently. So people are not adopting that in the EU until it's available just in the EU. And I think we'll start to see companies spring up to offer alternatives on that. I think that will be a very interesting route to watch, trying to see are people going for the very latest versus maybe not the cutting edge technology, but in a way they can control more as
Yeah,
well. So
and I
I think
think
that will be a big topic coming up.
yeah, and I think the trend in that area will absolutely depend on what happens or doesn't happen from a geopolitical aspect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about
Mm.
what we think will happen this year. What do you want to happen this year, Kevin? If you could have anything, what are your wishes for what would be true this year?
God, I wish people would slow down a bit. And actually have a bit of consideration on things that can happen. I think people are rocketing ahead, throwing more technologies in there. And I'm saying this as someone who loves picking up the latest and trying those things out. But I think I want all of us to combine together to slow down and work out how we can use these things that we already have in a more effective way. We talked right at the beginning that we've seen some of those things with the simplification. I want to see more of that, of us using what's there and only really building new stuff where some of those gaps are, not just throwing new things. This whole push towards AGI, I don't, I don't want that because I don't think
Don't
anyone
want it
knows what
yet.
AGI really is. I don't want it yet. I want something that's effective, not just a tick box exercise that we've done this, we've got the fastest model, it does this. I want people to stop and look at why and where they're going to use it, to use automation as is rather than always going to agentic and putting things on there. So I'm hoping people look at that a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And by people, I think we mean the big tech companies. I'm not sure we'll
Uh,
see that, but
I think the big tech companies and those using them a lot as well.
yeah. So the thing that I would like to see happen this year is for those people who are building AI solutions to actually start, and this I think ties into that talk around data sovereignty and control and privacy. But I'd really like to see people who are implementing these AI solutions to look at how they're leveraging the hardware in the AI PCs or the Copilot Plus PCs and family, because with the ability to now to use that kind of
So
offloaded.
you're talking about local hardware, so using your PC, even phones and things like that as well.
Yeah, so where these where these AI PCs have got the capability to do fairly impressive volumes of processing with small language models locally, there are still some pretty impressive results that you can get with that. And when we think in terms of sustainability and compute and data center impact and privacy, not everything
Yeah,
that
and
you
the
put into a
sovereignty again,
language
isn't it?
model
Mm,
needs to go to the cloud.
yeah.
So what I'd really like to see, and I don't think the industry is kind of mature enough yet, but what I'd really like to see is people giving more consideration around when they leverage cloud hosted versus when they leverage local small language models.
I'd love to see that as well, but until we can work out how the big tech companies license it, yeah, maybe, maybe not. we're absolutely running out of time, which is why those looking can probably see us both looking stressed and trying to spend a little quicker time on this as well. I think we'll wrap up there. Really looking forward to getting more Copilot connection. Love to hear from people as to what you want us to look at. But we hope you have a great start to 2026, everyone.
Thank you for joining. And if you, depending on where you're listening or watching this, please let us know what you want to see this year, what you think will happen, and any interesting things that you pull out of the report that we've not talked about as well.
Yeah, great point. Thanks very much, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.